Welcome to Group 5 presentation, where we will be discussing meeting the developmental needs of our young children. First, let's meet the group. My name is Miriam Sumaya Muhammad Nabi, and I will be your host for this presentation. Let's meet my group members. We have Najia Brown Davis, Donna Graham, Seema Ramharak, Azuba Jacobs, and Mary Ann Webbs. I now pass you on to Najia, who will do the introduction.
Good morning, fellow champions of childhood. I am Najia Brown Davis, representing the beautiful island of Jamaica. We have with us today fellow advocates, educators, and caregivers. I want you to think back for a moment. Think back to the sound of your grandmother's voice telling you a story, to the feeling of the sun on your skin as you played outside until the street lights came on, to the taste of a mango, juicy and sweet, straight from the tree. These aren't just memories, they are sensory building blocks of a Caribbean childhood. They are part of our unique recipe for raising children. As advocates, educators, and caregivers, we are the keepers of that recipe. We have gathered under the vital theme of meeting the development needs of our young children, and we have much to be proud of. Our region has moved mountains. We've brought early childhood development to the forefront of policy conversations. We have dedicated practitioners who pours their heart into their work, often with limited resources. The village is still very much alive, and that is our superpower. But true love for children requires not just celebration, but also encourages conversation. It requires us to ask, are we building the strongest possible foundation for their futures? While we have laid a formidable groundwork, the architectural plan we are using needs to be checked against the world's best blueprint. Today, let's hold our work up to the light of the National Association for the Education of Young Children standard, not as a rigid ruler to smack our wrist, but as a compass to guide our next most important steps.
Thank you, Najia, for your introduction. I now hand you guys over to Seema, who's going to talk about the overview of NAEYC guidelines.
Good day, everyone. My name is Seema Ramharak, and I am proud to be representing the beautiful Twin Island Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, a place where diversity is not just celebrated but woven into the very fabric of our society. In Trinidad and Tobago, our children grow up surrounded by a rich tapestry of culture, languages, religion, and traditions. From the rhythmic pulse of steel pan and soca to the storytelling heritage of calypso and folklore. Our childhood experiences are deeply rooted in community, creativity, and resilience. Today, we'll explore the key principles from the developmentally appropriate practices as outlined by NACI. 1. Development and learning are dynamic and interactive. What that means is that children's development is shaped by both biology and experiences in the classroom or at home. An example is children exposed to music, right? Some children may be exposed to different types of music, tassa drumming or steel pan in the class. Their cognitive and motor skills develop through hands-on exploration and rhythmic play. 2. Every child is unique. Each child has their own developmental path, strengths, and needs. An example of this, one child in the classroom might be fluent in English and Spanish, while another might be a little more reserved and prefer visual learning. The teacher could adapt by using bilingual books and also having visual storytelling for the other. Number 3, development occurs in predictable sequences, but with variation. Children generally follow similar developmental milestones, but at a different rate. An example of this in the classroom: while most 4-year-olds may begin forming full sentences, some students may still be mastering basic vocabulary. Number 4, early experiences have profound effects. Early relationships and environments shape lifelong learning and behavior. What this means is a child who receives consistent emotional support at home and in preschool is more likely to develop strong regulation skills. So educators can reinforce this by creating a warm, predictable classroom environment, just like what we do. Number 5, development and learning occur in multiple social and cultural contexts. Family, community, language, and culture all influence learning. Well, an example of that in Trinidad is looking at a multicultural classroom, right? Children celebrate Diwali, Eid al-Fitr, and Christmas. Teachers incorporate these traditions into the curriculum, helping children see their identities reflected in learning. And children learn best through relationships, and who know that more than a preschool teacher? Providing a secure, responsive relationship, a foundation to learning. Caregivers and early childhood center build trust by greeting each child warmly, listening to their stories, and involving their families in the classroom. Play. Play is essential to learning. Play is how young children explore, experiment, and understand the world. An example in Trinidad, during carnival season, children create their own costumes and participate in mini parade. Through this play, they develop creativity, motor skill, and cultural awareness. 8. Development occurs across multiple domains. Physical, cognitive, social, emotional, and language development are connected. An example: a child learning to balance on a beam during outdoor play is also building confidence, which is the social emotional. Learning new words, balance, being steady, language is learned there. And solving problems through cognitive thinking. Number 9, children learn best when challenged just beyond their current abilities. Learning happens when children are supported to stretch their thinking skills. An example of this: in most classroom, children who can count to 20 are encouraged to count in twos or recognize patterns using local fruits like mangoes and bananas, and the teacher provides scaffold learning to take the child to the next level. We will now explore different types of standards in my next slide. Whether you're a teacher, caregiver, administrator, or policymaker, you've likely faced questions like, am I doing this right? Or how do I know this is best for the child? NACI professional standards and competencies for early childhood educators answer those. They're not just rules, they're reflections of what we value in early learning. Let's explore some of these standards. Child development and learning in context. This standard emphasizes the importance of understanding the full developmental spectrum from birth to age 8. Highlight that each child is unique developmentally, culturally, and linguistically. Stress the role of relationships and context: family, culture, community, and society in shaping development. 2. Family, teacher partnership, and community connections. This standard acknowledged that families are children's first teachers and essential partners, emphasized the value of building respectful, reciprocal relationships with families. 3. Child observation, documentation, and assessment. This standard explains that assessment is not just about data, it's understanding children deeply. It discussed the importance of observation and documentation as tools to inform instruction, emphasize ethical, cultural, and linguistically appropriate assessment practices. 4. Developmentally, culturally, and linguistically appropriate teaching practice. And what this is teaching is complex and must be responsive to each child's age, abilities, and context. Emphasize the power of positive caring relationship as a foundation for learning. Highlight the need for anti-bias, inclusive, and evidence-based teaching strategies. 5. Knowledge, application, and integration of academic content. Early educators must be well versed in core academic disciplines and how young children learn each subject, discussing the importance of integrating early learning standards and curriculum into the framework to guide instructions. 6. This standard is about professionalism as an early childhood educator. It reinforced the idea that early childhood education is a profession and not just a job. Discuss the importance of ethical practice, advocacy, and professional communication, and encourage ongoing learning, reflection, and collaboration with peers. That's it for me. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Seema, for that insightful overview of the NAYC standards. Now, let us look at the analysis of the Caribbean context presented by Mary Ann.
Formal care. It's seen as a crucial foundation for lifelong learning. Influenced by international standards like National Association for the Education of Young Children, DAP, Developmentally Appropriate Practice, and the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. Many islands have reformed their ECE systems to promote holistic development. The emphasis is now on child-centered learning that values local culture, family involvement, and learning through play rather than rote instruction. Now, each island is taking important steps towards strengthening its ECE sector. For example, in Jamaica, the Early Childhood Commission provides strong governance and ensures that all preschools meet national standards for health, safety, and learning. Trinidad and Tobago, on the other hand, focuses on making ECCE universally accessible, while also investing in teacher preparation and monitoring private centers. Meanwhile, the OECS framework provides shared governance for smaller islands such as Dominica, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, helping them develop curriculum standards and quality assurance system even with limited resources. Several Caribbean initiatives reflect NAEYC's principles in action. In Dominica, teachers use high-scope approach, where children plan, carry out, and review their own activities. A perfect example of active hands-on learning. Jamaica has home visiting and parenting programs that connect families to schools, ensuring children receive consistent support at home
and in the classroom. And through UWE's teacher education programs, early childhood educators are being trained to be reflective practitioners, to observe, plan, and teach responsibly, just as NAEYC's recommend.
Thank you, Mary Ann, for sharing with us the research of the analysis of the Caribbean context. Now, let us look at the assessment of regional compliance with standards presented by Nadia.
Thank you, Madam Host. So, let's assess our Caribbean alignment. The first stop is relationship. The standard says build warm, responsive connections. Our village culture means children are often surrounded by love. But we also get an incomplete. Why? Because when you put one amazing teacher in a room with 35 wiggly 3-year olds, that deep, intentional one on one connection becomes a marathon. We have the love, now we need smaller ratios to let it flourish. Next is the curriculum, the battle of the worksheet. The standard clearly says learning should be playful, holistic, and developmentally appropriate. Implementing a curriculum that is evidence based, comprehensive, and developmentally appropriate through play and inquiry has made fantastic progress in creating national curricula that acknowledge holistic development. Which leads me to teaching. The standard says use engaging, developmentally savvy teaching methods. Most teachers have the passion in their bone, but they need more tools in their toolbox. Many haven't been trained in how a young child's brain learns best through inquiry and exploration. Now, finally, assessment. It's used as a continuous, purposeful process to understand and support a child's growth, but we're stuck in the old school that focus on what a child can produce on a filled out worksheet or a recited poem. True assessment is about understanding the process. How did you solve the problem? It's about documenting the process and not just collecting scores.
Thank you, Nadia, for that insightful information on the assessment of regional compliances with standards. Now, let us look at the analysis of the gap presented by Azuba.
Welcome. In this presentation, I will be exploring some of the major gaps that continue to challenge early childhood education across the Caribbean region. Although many islands have made progress, issues such as limited teacher training, outdated curricula, weak assessment practices, and uneven access still affect the quality of children's early learning experiences. This presentation draws on regional data and key sources such as UNESCO, UNICEF, and NAEYC standards to highlight where improvements are needed and how these challenges impact children's development and readiness for school. The first major gap is limited teacher training. Many early childhood educators still lack professional preparation in developmental appropriate practices, and training quality varies across islands like St. Lucia and Grenada. Glantz and Sullivan, 2000. Next, there is curriculum misalignment. Many programs still rely on teacher-led rote learning methods instead of play-based and inquiry-driven approaches recommended by NAEYC 2020. Another challenge is insufficient assessment. Many teachers still use one-size-fits-all approaches and neglect individualized assessments, which limits tailored learning opportunities. Gordon and Brown, 2020. We also see weak family and community engagement, where parental involvement in preschool activities remains inconsistent, especially in countries like St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Thank you, Azuba, for sharing with us your analysis of the gap. Now, let us look at the recommendations done by Donna.
My name is Donnie Graham, and I'll be looking at the recommendations for the gaps that are found in our region. The first gap is limited teacher training. What we would recommend is for mentorship programs where we're going to pair experienced and certified teachers with teachers who are new in the system so that they can gain experience in the profession to support their reflexive practice. Secondly, we would recommend to have regional ECE training centers to standardize teacher preparation across islands. The second gap that we identified was curriculum misalignment. So the recommendation for that gap would be for the national curricula to be revised to integrate DAP, which is a developmentally appropriate practice, and child-centered learning. We would also recommend to integrate play, inquiry, and project-based learning to promote children's holistic development with skills of creativity, critical thinking, and collaboration. For the third gap, which is insufficient assessment approaches, we would recommend to create a regional assessment framework that emphasizes holistic development. We would also recommend to adopt a formative and authentic assessments such as portfolios and anecdotal records. We'd also recommend to train teachers in observation-based assessment. The fourth gap is weak family and community engagement. What we would recommend is to have family engagement or outreach programs to our parents. So this would be parent workshops or family learning days. We'd also recommend to have a parent communication social group such as WhatsApp where we can communicate with our parents. Also, train teachers in effective parent-teacher communication strategies and relationships. For the fifth gap, on equal access to programs, we would recommend for the government to make subsidies to have quality ECE affordable for low-income families. We also recommend to expand access through community-based centers in underserved areas. For the sixth gap, which is resource constraints, we'd recommend that the government give schools an allotted sum of money to cater to the school or the classroom resources. We'd also recommend for government to give the schools grants to fund the infrastructures that are needed. The seventh gap is policy gaps, and we would recommend for the standardizing of licensing and accreditation for ECE centers. That should be a requirement. We also recommend to develop a Caribbean regional ECE framework that is aligned with NAEYC and UNESCO guidelines. We also recommend to establish national ECE quality assurance bodies to monitor and evaluate implementation.
Thank you, Donna, for informing us of the recommendations, which brings us now to the conclusion. Meeting the diverse needs of young children in early childhood education is both a profound responsibility and a powerful opportunity to shape lifelong learning. Grounded in the principle of the National Association for the Education of Young Children, which is known as the NAEYC, educators are called to create environments that are developmentally appropriate, culturally responsive, and emotionally nurturing that encourages openness, involvement of families, and school preparedness. By honoring each child's unique strengths, interests, and backgrounds, and by fostering strong partnerships with families, we lay the foundation for equity, inclusion, and joyful learning. As we continue to reflect, adapt, and advocate, the NAEYC standards serve as a guiding light, reminding us that high quality early education is not only about what we teach, but how we care, connect, and empower every child to thrive.